At the Ford Championship at Doral in March 2003, David Duval woke up on Friday morning before his second round and the room was spinning. He was wobbly and lightheaded. Doctors called it positional vertigo, an inner ear condition that triggers sudden dizziness. But for Duval, this wasn't just a medical diagnosis. It was the moment his identity shattered. For a golfer, you can't swing if you can't trust your balance. But for Duval, it was deeper. He was a man who had built his entire life around the concept of absolute, cold-blooded control. And now, he couldn't even stand up straight. This wasn't just any pro. This was the man who had been world number one during the peak of the Tiger Woods era. Now, he was falling outside the top 100. The story isn't just about a medical condition. It's about what happens when a player built on restraint and precision is forced to fight his own equilibrium. And this is where things finally caught up to him. Because the fall didn't actually begin in 2003. That was just the day the world finally saw the collapse. To understand why Duval's crash felt so brutal, you have to understand the armor he wore at his peak. The late 90s was Tiger's world. He was warping the sport, and most players were just trying to survive in his gravity. But Duval didn't just survive. In 1999, he snatched the #1 ranking away. He did it with a cold, measured precision. Behind those wraparound sunglasses, he looked like a machine, unfazed and perfectly clinical. This was the man who shot a 59 at the Bob Hope, closing with an eagle under the highest pressure imaginable. He wasn't just playing golf, he was solving it. He didn't ride emotions, he dictated them. When he won the Open in 2001, shooting a 67 on Sunday to win by 3, it felt like a final confirmation. On paper, he was a major champion set to dominate for a decade. But when you look closer, that win was actually the last time the world made sense to him. Within months, the machine started to glitch. And this raises the question that would haunt the rest of his career. What happens when control is the only thing you have and your body stops cooperating? With Duval, once that feeling of certainty started slipping, the rest unraveled with terrifying speed. Now comes the part of the story that isn't dramatic for the cameras, but it's where careers go to die. The quiet agony of playing through pain. When Duval's back started failing, he didn't just lose distance, he lost his truth. He later described the horror of trying to swing while protecting a spine that felt like it was snapping. He couldn't turn. He wasn't pivoting. He started flipping the club, narrowing his stance, desperate to find a workaround. He summed it up with one blunt line: "I was a disaster." We often look at struggling stars and say they lost their confidence. But for Duval, the tragedy was more mechanical and psychological at once. When your body takes away your swing, your brain finds a workaround. Then you start compensating for the workaround. Eventually, you don't know which version of your swing is going to show up. For a man who lived by the idea of controlled golf, this wasn't just a slump. This was an identity crisis. This wasn't just a bad stretch. It was the start of something irreversible. Which brings us back to 2003, the year everyone saw the collapse in real time. The vertigo at Doral was the final betrayal. In golf, your world depends on a steady visual picture. The moment Duval's motion and balance failed, his control became a fantasy. By July 2003, the collapse became official. For the first time in 8 years, David Duval fell outside the world top 100. We need to be clear about what that means. The world ranking isn't a bad week. It's a verdict. It is a public, mathematical confirmation that you are no longer the player you claim to be. For a former #1 and major winner, dropping that far wasn't just a stat. It was a humiliation. That isn't just a dip in form. It is a professional disappearing act. The misses weren't isolated anymore. The baseline had changed. He wasn't fighting for trophies. He was fighting for the right to play on the weekend. The issues had piled up too high: a back that broke the swing, vertigo that broke the balance, and the added pressure of trying to play perfect golf with a body he no longer trusted. But just when the world was ready to look away, the old Duval flickered back to life for one final, haunting week. In June 2009, Duval arrived at the U.S. Open at Bethpage Black, ranked 882nd in the world. He was a ghost of a former champion. Then, out of nowhere, the machine returned. No fireworks, no lucky breaks, just that old, steady, patient golf that refuses to blink. Bethpage was a muddy, grueling test that chewed up the world's best. Duval, a man who hadn't felt the heat of a Sunday lead in 8 years, stood in the rain and refused to break. When the dust settled, he finished tied for second, just 2 shots behind the lead. Afterward, he said this was where he belonged. Fans saw it as an inspirational comeback, but the reality was much darker. Bethpage proved a terrifying point. Duval hadn't lost his talent. He had lost his reliability. Golf, at the elite level, isn't about proving you can do it once. It's about the ability to repeat it. Bethpage proved the fire was still there, but he could no longer ignite it on command. The 1 week wasn't a rebirth. It was a reminder of everything he had lost. So when we look back at Duval, the story is far more unsettling than a simple fall from grace. It's a story about the lie we tell ourselves about control. Duval built an entire existence on being the practical, emotionless master of the sport, and the sport rewarded him for it, until it hit him with problems that logic couldn't solve. The tour doesn't pause for your health. While he was rebuilding his swing and fighting vertigo, the rest of the world kept getting faster and sharper. You don't just recover in professional golf. You either keep pace or you are erased. Duval is 54 now. He's an analyst. He's respected. People still listen when he speaks, because the mind of a champion is still there. But his career remains a warning. The fall of David Duval was brutal because it was personal. It showed us that in golf, control is a fragile illusion. You can be the best in the world on Monday, and by Friday, the room can start spinning. And there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. The swing can vanish, the body can betray you, but the most painful part is realizing that the control you thought you owned was only ever on loan.